I do want to call out that the next 5 minutes of talking I'm going to do is crucially important. I can't see if there's other counselors online, but would just encourage you to nudge your peers to take a look and view this information if they're not here in the room or in the meeting.
I'll just note the entire Finance Committee is signed in and here.
All right, thank you, Counselor.
Only entire committee, but we're here.
This will be critical context to understand as we enter both the immediate decision-making and this upcoming budget cycle. While much of the focus today is on the general fund, the financial challenge that we face is not just a general fund problem. The delta between available transportation funding and basic infrastructure and maintenance needs is currently projected at around $25 million for fiscal 26-27. Areas of the city like Portland permitting and development still has a revenue challenge given the continued lag in major development activity. Water and sewer utilities are likely looking at significant rate increases for multiple years, given significant operations and major critical infrastructure projects that are underway. We'll share more details shortly, but we do anticipate, as we know, a large general fund gap remaining this fiscal year. We expect a large budgetary gap next fiscal year, and there's low confidence in the likelihood of a broad revenue recovery in the near term. All that to say that I expect the city to be in a financial crisis for the next 18 to 36 months. And it's really hard to call that out. It's unpleasant to call that out, but I think it's critically important to be transparent and clear-eyed about the reality that we face for the coming couple of fiscal years. One of my recommendations is that we treat this moment like a crisis response. We focus on problem solving. The immediate focus right now is on the remaining in budgetary balance for this fiscal year, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But we also need to begin looking at longer-term solutions that will impact multiple fiscal years and budget cycles. Consistent with City Administrator Lee's introductory comments, I recommend that we stop the habit and legacy practice of moving from crisis to budget crisis to budget crisis to budget crisis. And we stop only solving for the current year's gap or the current year's problem. I recommend that we develop a real, tangible strategy to get through this crisis response moment and move to a place of stability and eventually recovery. Next slide, please. To help guide that move towards long-term stability, I propose assembling a work team, of which we have the bones of, as Councilor Zimmerman mentioned, to prepare a financial stabilization and recovery plan. I'll preview this with you briefly today so we can very quickly move and urgently move to action. On the screen here is a visual concept to show how we might think about the next few years. Showing what I've called phase one, which is the current crisis response moment, which I expect will last through, as I said, at least kind of an 18, potentially 36-month window, then pivoting to what we hope will be a period of stabilization, moving into kind of a transition and assessment, by which I mean let's confirm we actually are stabilized before we start making new expenditure decisions, and then eventually moving towards recovery and growth. You'll note that this is roughly aligned to budget cycles, which is a key decision point in implementation of the plan. Though in reality, we will constantly be reassessing and adjusting these timelines in real time. The conceptual guideposts of these phases will not be perfectly aligned and will be interactive. For example, we will need to begin putting recovery strategies in motion even while we're still focusing on crisis response and stabilization so that those recovery strategies can be available to us when that time comes. I wanted to preview this today so that I can provide a wider lens on the recommended approach, the bigger picture outside of just this current year or next year's budget development, and discuss how all of these will thread together over multiple budget cycles. Next slide, please. I did want to zoom in a little bit on phase one, which is where we are right now, and I've further broken these down into kind of sub-phases. First being phase 1A, which is the actions that we're taking right now. We're going to talk about the rapid response, how we're responding to the current year budget challenge, and so I'm going to kind of hold that for a moment, and Ruth will come back to that in a few moments. Simultaneously, kind of the second part of Phase 1A is development of that proposed financial stabilization and recovery plan. Conceptualizing that now, one of the key elements that I think is critical is that we will develop a 12 to 15-ish person work group, manageable size work group that will include multiple perspectives, both internal and external to the city, hoping that we can identify time to meet regularly, weekly perhaps, I hope, throughout March and April to really accelerate that work. Simultaneously, similarly, looking to have a broader circle, kind of an advisory group concept that'll have a potentially large number of people, 15 to a couple dozen, again, internal and external perspectives, so we can add a couple of participatory touch points to receive feedback as that work progresses. My objective is to have that very intense work period for March and April with a target to produce something, a real plan that we can bring back to council in May or as early as possible to help inform 26-27 budget deliberations. That may be an impossible and unrealistic timeline, but I believe it's imperative that we do our best to prioritize the time and energy to avoid delay, get the plan in place so that we can inform the budget conversation and move towards progress as rapidly as possible. Next slide, please. What I've called Phase 1B, which is still in the crisis response mode, but kind of the next temporarily, is fiscal 26-27 budget development, which is, I mentioned, hopefully will align with the outputs of that stability and recovery plan. I know there's also additional simultaneous strategic planning efforts going on at council, so hopefully that work will fold into that. And then we know the kind of standard budget conversations that we're going to have coming up in 26-27. I'll note I have this targeted as April to June. That work is actually beginning right now. That budget development is happening within the organization to prepare information to be released both in advance of April, which is the mayor's proposed budget, and then those deliberations will continue, but focusing that timeline on kind of a Phase 1B here. And just noting, we did have some conversation about budget development, I believe it was last week when council adopted the budget calendar. And then the last piece of the crisis response, what I've called Phase 1C, is actually implementing those service reductions or budgetary decisions that are made during 26-27. And I've noted a few likely suggestions here. I do want to note that I would emphasize the need to carefully monitor monthly spending, to monitor the outcomes that we're getting in the context of what's in the developed stability plan, and be ready to adjust further as we're going maybe go off or aligned with that track. And note that I expect that that kind of crisis response may still continue into 27-28 budget development in the absence of having some beneficial revenue wind in our sails that's maybe beyond what's expected. Lastly, while this news is sobering and very difficult, I do share this information with a strong measure of optimism. As we're 1 year through this transition to a fundamentally different form of government, we're experiencing opportunities to shift legacy habits and practices and find new ways of doing things. Indeed, I believe that that is one of the expectations of voters in directing this change. As I've been discussing this plan with colleagues and employees in advance of today's work session, I've been comforted by a sense of almost relief in acknowledging the reality and in the shared recognition that we have a pathway before us to strategically shift the organization from a place of constant crisis to a place of stability and growth. I'm also grateful for the leadership and advice of C.A. Lee and for his willingness to step into this challenge literally on day one. I look forward to the support and leadership of this council as we come across the many, many difficult decisions that will be before us in the coming months. I thank you in advance, and we will manage through this crisis together for the good of the city and for all Portlanders.